If you like fast, brutal, no-pause shooters that make you feel powerful run after run, then this game should be on your radar. Welcome everyone, StealthyShiroean here, and today I'm bringing you a review of Deadzone Rogue. This roguelite first-person shooter was developed and published by Prophecy Games, releasing it in August 2025. If you know me, then you know roguelites aren't really my thing, despite the number of them that I've played for the channel over the years. That said, Deadzone Rogue sunk its claws into me, and it took me a while before I finally set the game down. It has some flaws to be sure, but at its core, it's a solid game through and through. But without further ado, let's get to the review. You start off waking up on a derelict space station with a knife, pistol, and no memories. Very quickly, you're thrust into your first mission to find that the robots on board the ship have decided to go rogue. Story is doled out loosely throughout the game with some occasional dialogue in between stages and capstone moments after beating a boss. Much of it is actually conveyed through logs that you find scattered throughout your run. At first they seem random and superfluous, but over time they start painting a larger picture as to what went wrong on board the station. It's minimal, but effective enough at telling something that I became genuinely interested in reading the next log I would come across. The game does excel at its atmosphere. Lighting, sound design, various enemy models, etc. all work to elevate the game's isolated and dangerous setting. Several set pieces for the various rooms were well thought out, even if the placement of all of them didn't make as much sense. At the end of the day though, a game like this lives or dies based on the quality of its gameplay, rather than if it could tell a compelling story. As it is a roguelite, Deadzone Rogue plays out over the course of a run. After clearing the first mission, you gain the ability to select from a series of them. Additionally, you select an appropriate difficulty, with the hardest difficulties being locked until you've proven yourself worthy of them, aka beating the previous difficulty level. All of these have various sectors that need to be cleared, with the standard being either 20 or 30 of them. Some missions have waves of enemies to fight through and see how far you can go. Furthermore, many of these missions also center around a specific theme, like close quarter fighting with melee and shotguns, or all of the enemies being of the same type per sector. I actually really like these missions because it forced me to play with different builds I wouldn't normally consider. Anyway, once in the mission, every 2 sectors of fighting you then arrive at an upgrade station where you can upgrade existing gear, purchase new gear, or try and reroll buffs and element types on the equipment you have. Interestingly enough, each weapon only has a set number of quality upgrades, such as going from a blue tier weapon to a purple tier, so it forces players to possibly have to switch weapons or even weapon types if they want to try and get legendary gear by the end of the run. And I want to take a quick second to say how much I liked how I could save every 2 sectors. I really dislike roguelites that force you to abandon mid-run if you need to exit out of the game. I loved how I could easily jump into the game for 15 minutes or so, and then quickly jump out if I wanted to. Although, I wish they had extended that same courtesy to the wave-based missions, which are easily some of the longest missions. Unfortunately, if you have to quit mid-run, then you just have to try again when you have more time. After a run is finished, whether by reaching the end or dying, then the player is kicked back to the main hub where they can upgrade some passes with their tech they found, or make some cosmetic changes with the weapon skins you can unlock. Then select the next mission and do it all over again. The gunplay itself is solid. More than solid, actually. It's a ton of fun. Combat in Deadzone is frenetic and fast-paced. It relies on constantly moving, lining up your next shot, and making sure you reload at the right moments. There's a variety of different enemies. At the start you have simple robots that attack you, either ranged or melee. More enemies get thrown into the mix with spiders, large robot guys, and weird amalgamations of tech and flesh. I thought they looked nice, but I do wish there was slightly more enemy variety, as many of them seem to be reskins of earlier foes. With the rooms having several different layouts and a variety, there was always a good mix of environments. Some had environmental hazards or platforming, where one wrong jump could have you losing health. There were even some outside sections, meaning out in space, which was kinda cool. Obviously, some areas had more cover than others, forcing me to fight a bit differently from room to room. Then there are the builds themselves, which can augment your playstyle and guns. Some of them are elemental upgrades that favor certain elements, which is why it might be really important for you to hold on to a weapon of a particular type. and others will affect your health, shields, or damage based on specific things like whether you're near or far to the enemy. And all this flitting from spot to spot while aiming for enemy vitals can be done with a co-op buddy or two. Or 3 if you want, since it supports up to 4 players. A buddy and I got together and played this over a couple of sessions, and it was a lot of fun. I'm happy to report that we didn't run into any issues while playing the game, and there wasn't even much lag at all, which is funny given that I was playing with someone living on the other side of the world. Co-op does change some things though, as death doesn't immediately mean a failed run if your co-op buddy can get rid of all the enemies in the room. Eventually, we started to realize that tailoring our builds around different elements could be incredibly overpowering. Needless to say though, it's fun with friends. And on that note, if you're interested in deep dive videos on somewhat obscure games like the action JRPG Drakengard, or the stealth game Death to Spies, or even want to hear another opinion on Deadzone Rogue, then please check out my friend's channel, Sen Meyer, a link in the description and on a card for those interested.
Wonder what this one says.
Lastly, I'd like to talk about the game's progression because I think it's done really well. There's the obvious upgrading skills in between runs to incrementally improve your chances of survival in your next attempt, but I like the way the game introduced new mechanics. Things like new weapons and rerolls for items were unlocked later on, forcing the players to get familiar with what was already there. Many times with roguelites, I feel like a better part of the game is walled off until you grind long enough to get access to how the game was really intended to be played. However, Deadzone gives players enough to experiment with from the get-go, while trickling in more augments and weapons to use later on. Furthermore, in Zone 2 they introduce superior items, which adds more options to your builds, and in Zone 3 the game introduces synergies, which are combinations of certain items and/or augments that provide you with powerful passive abilities. Both of these additional mechanics were smartly introduced later on as the player is already familiar with the game and give the player new strategies to think about the further in they get. My only negative that I have with this system is that the mechanics therein are only in that zone onward. So Zone 3 missions will have the synergies and the superior items introduced in Zone 2, along with the base Zone 1 stuff. However, if I play a Zone 2 mission, then I don't have access to synergies, or if I play a Zone 1 mission, then I don't have access to synergies or superior items. I get that it's probably for balance issues, but it still would have been amazing to just go back to those earlier missions and utterly destroy everything with a good build. And that brings us to my final thoughts, but first, if you're enjoying the video or found it helpful, then please consider giving this video a like and subscribing for more video game coverage in the future in the form of reviews and first impressions. And hey, if you happen to be watching this video in the first week of its release, then I'd be super appreciative if you could hit that hype button as well. Deadzone Rogue runs for $24.99 USD, and I put in just over 35 hours with it. I played through all the missions and replayed many of them on higher difficulties. However, I still have a long way to go to completely clear all of them. I imagine there's another 20 to 30 hours at least before 100%. Additionally, the devs have announced a free DLC that will bring a new zone, enemies, weapons, etc. No set release date, but I imagine it will be sometime within the first half of 2026. And once again, it will be entirely free, so this game definitely is worth it at full price. Overall, I had way more fun with this game than I ever expected to have. I'm not sure if I'm skilled enough to clear the hardest difficulties of the game, but I would definitely like to see where the game goes with future content. In addition, I'd like to keep an eye on Prophecy Games, as it's clear they have a definite talent and passion at their indie studio. If you played the game, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't, then let me know if it sounds like something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other questions. I hope this video helped you in some small way, and if it did, then please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, or whatever it is you feel like doing. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day.